Hello, my name is Misha, and welcome to Dark Forest Books. In the month of June, I read 6 books. Of the 6, I had 1 3-star, 1 3.5, 2 4-star, and then 2 5-star reads. But it was a really good reading month, I will say, throughout 2026, the first half of the year. I had a lot of DNFs, a lot of books I was very iffy on, but this was a solid reading month for me. There's a few books that I wasn't expecting to love. It was kind of a roller coaster while reading them. I keep looking down because I have my notes here. So starting from the bottom, the book I gave 3 stars to is Library of Amorlin. What drew me to this book was the cover. It's really stunning to me. I loved the cover. The Library of Amorlin is about a con artist named Kassira. She kind of got wrapped up in a con and her life had just not played out well, and she ended up going to prison. Essentially was cut a deal in prison, like, hey, you can get your term shortened if you go into the military and hunt beasts. Beasts in this world are kind of this symbolism for sin. There is a god named Hadra, and that's the most prominent religion in the land, and these beasts are kind of like a manifestation of sin, and by hunting the beasts, you're kind of washing away the sin, so to speak. And if you're a beast sympathizer, then that's also viewed very badly. Kassira is cut another deal, hey, something is going on with the Library of Morlin. We need someone on the inside, but of course there's an ulterior motive to that. They don't want just someone inside the library, but there's a motive within the motive, so to speak. So I gave her 3 stars because I felt like with fantasy, sometimes the writing is a bit redundant, where the Library of Amorlin is ran by a man named Alistair. And it's his cutting gray eyes or his aura or this feeling between them, between Kassir and Alistair. It's okay, we get it. You know what I mean? It was reiterated over and over and over again. So that was kind of my qualm with Library of Amorlin. I'm new to fantasy, to be honest. High fantasy books are not really my jam. Fantasy where I can still kind of be immersed without being okay, we're kind of out of my reach, I enjoy. But overall, would I recommend it? Yes. I think I always love stories. I think anyone that enjoys books loves stories that have to do with libraries or librarians or this really fantastical place, or not fantastical, but just a big library where there's knowledge and other people learning it. Other people love to read books. I love the idea of there's being this cathedral-esque library. It's just this gigantic, beautiful building. So in terms of writing, I liked it. It was just few moments of redundancy, or it kind of lost me, where I have 5-star reads here where it doesn't lose me, still enjoyable. I would still recommend it. I think it's a good book. It just didn't rank super high for me. Next up, this book on my Goodreads, I actually rated it 4 stars, but they don't do half-star ratings, of course, on Goodreads. The more I sat with this book, the more I decided to drop its rating a 1/2 star. It has very mixed reviews. So this is the one book I have a physical copy of. The rest I either rented from my library or got the Kindle Unlimited. But it is Innamorata by Ava Reed. A really gorgeous cover. I loved the sprayed edges, very pretty book, right? And this is my first Ava Reed. I've never read her books before, but I always hear such great things about her. But anyway, what drove me to pick this up was simply the cover. Reading the inside flap as a visionary, atmospheric, gothic fantasy about necromancy, vengeance, and soul-consuming love. And this is a duology, so book 1 of 2. I think that's a great description without going into the whole blurb on the inside, but it follows these different houses. So they're houses named after different body parts. There's House of Teeth, House of Eyes, House of Blood, things like that. In this book, you're following the 2 women from the House of Teeth, which is Lady Agnes and her cousin Marozia. Marozia is described as the polar opposite of Agnes. Agnes is essentially described as a corpse. They have a super weird relationship as the book goes on, but the House of Teeth is kind of a matriarch ran family, where at the beginning of the book, the matriarch has just passed away, their grandmother, and they're going through this ritual called the desecration. Not a spoiler, this is literally within the first 5 pages of the book, and this is where you're introduced to each of the houses. So the House of Teeth gets her teeth, House of Blood gets her blood, etc. House of Eyes gets her eyes. Super fucking weird. Let's see what this is about. First, 70% of the book, I want to say, I was hooked. Like, I loved the gothic like vibe and world building. As you're following the two women from the House of Teeth, the women are married to other families kind of in the land to strengthen ties for political reasons, power, etc. Marozia is meant to marry Leoprand. He is a prince from another family. And that is where the story kind of takes off. The women, Agnes and Marozia, leave their castle in the House of Teeth, and they are always in Leoprand's house after that. So the cousins go together. Marozia doesn't want to be without Agnes, and that is where the story just we stay there and we take off. That is all I'll say about the book. That's probably about the first 30-40 pages. What I loved about this book was the writing. Flowery writing can feel overwritten to me a little bit, and I think again that's just preference. To me, it's like, okay, I get it, like, but I understand at the same time it's meant to be descriptive and, again, kind of bring on that imagery, bring on the immersion. The world building was great. The atmosphere was great. It was this cold, dark, massive castle. Like, it felt very gothic, and I loved how Ava Reid described even like the clothes that Agnes and Marozia were wearing. I loved how Ava Reid wrote the different houses. Each of the houses had a different color, and just the colors that Agnes wore specifically were like deep purples and grays, almost like the color of a bruise. But it just sounded really nice and just very, again, it was immersive. You could see it in your head and just picture the story. Would I recommend this book? Yes, I would say check trigger warnings. I think if I knew the things the story would touch on, it would have been different. But going into it blind, the last 30-50 pages, you're just like, what the hell is going on? It's right up your alley if you like gothic and dark and kind of like just cold castle vibes, right? Like, it hits all of those things. I would just say check the content, make sure that you're comfortable with it. And the last like 50 pages is where you're like, it's like that cringe feeling in your stomach where you're like, oh my God, what are we doing? And that's, I say, just be mindful about what you're reading. I put the mic down and we had to start over. Hello from the future. This is the next day in the recording. You saw I forgot to pick up the mic and had to re-record some parts. One of those parts being when I talked about Blood Over Brighthaven. So re-recording that today. Future me is going to jump in for a minute and then we'll flip back to my last reads of the month. But jumping in with Blood Over Brighthaven, this is a fiction book. I think we've all heard of it at this point. It went really viral. People have raved about it. I finally read it in June. It's sat on my Kindle for a long time now, but I rated Blood Over Brighthaven 4 stars. A quick recap for those who don't know what the Blood Over Brighthaven is about. It follows a woman named Sayona. She is studying to become the first female mage in her city, in her country, in her kingdom. This is set in the land of Tiran. Tiran is sat within this dome of protection. Outside the dome lies something called Blight, and it kind of ravages the people that live outside the wall, which are called the Quinn. Sayona will be the first female mage in Tiran history. It's predominantly, has always been males. So Sayona takes her studies, her academics, becoming a mage very seriously. Sayona passes her exam to become the first female mage in history of Tiran. Her male counterparts are giving her shit and tell her like, oh, the janitor can be your research assistant rather than giving her a proper one. And the janitor in this case is a Quinn. And the Quinn in Tiran world are kind of subhuman, not educated, everything of that nature. The Quinn people are just viewed very negatively in the world of Tiran. And again, like these are the people that live outside the dome and kind of have to fend off the blight and live amongst it. The Quinn helping Sayona, who is a janitor, his name is Tommel. It ends up being that Tommel is a fantastic research assistant and him and Sayona work very well together. The new entry of mages, Sayona and her colleagues, classmates, they are tasked with expanding the dome. And in order to do that, the dome over Tiran, in order to expand the dome over Tiran, it requires more energy to do that. The magic system is really interesting in this book where it's not typical spell casting, but they do it through something called a spellograph. There's an image of it in the first few pages of the book, but essentially it's like a typewriter, and by typing out these spells, it will then call on the energy that is needed to cast the spells. And in order to expand the dome, it requires more energy, but they're having a problem of sourcing the energy, and that's kind of the main plot line of the book is how can we do this? Sayona wants to be the one to do it, of course. Like, she's already the first female mage, but if she's the first female mage and figures out how to expand the barrier, kind of get the energy sustainably, if you will. It allows her to kind of go down in history as this really incredible woman. I'll stop there. That is essentially the main plot line of Blood Over Brighthaven. I rated this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. The magic system was great. I want to say that I gave it 4 stars for Tommel. I'll be honest, Sayona was a really difficult character for me. And I think that she's meant to be disliked. She is very stubborn, very driven again, like her academics. I don't want to see the prestige of being a mage. It's not about the notoriety, but it's just about the accomplishment. Like she's so driven. At the same time, Sayona knows no different. Like she's brought up in this world of Tyrion where the Quinn people are just looked at very, very negatively, very poorly. And in the times where she's working with Tommel, it's like hard to hear, it's hard to read her thoughts about him or her thoughts of Quinn people. With this direct exposure to like a Quinn man and the opportunity to learn of his culture, she just doesn't. That was my main issue with Sayona, is as closely as she worked with Tommel, she like never had a redemption arc. Like throughout the book, she continued to say horrible shit to him. And that was just hard to read. And I really loved Tommel's character. There's a part of the book where they are talking about morality, basically. That it's not that Sayona cannot grasp morality, but it's like the Quinn kind of values that underlying morality are just different than what she knows in Tyrion culture. But the conversation that Tommel has with Sayona is essentially a trolley car-esque problem. How can you define goodness and how that weighs out based on someone's actions, and just the whole dialogue they had. That was one of my favorite parts of the book. I love stuff like that, anything that's introspective, reflective, that makes you think bigger, ponder on these bigger ideas. I love that. I can totally see why this book went viral. It's really unique, again, in its magic system, having the spellograph that's essentially like a typewriter. The fact the author could write a character that got such a reaction from me means that they are successful in delivery, the character creation, things like that. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. For me personally, Tommel is what carried this book. Sayona was really hard for me, and I just loved that Tommel was able to have this discourse with Sayona and kind of pick her brain and make her think, and those were really the most enticing conversations for me, or parts of the book. Overall, I really love the book, and I'm happy I finally read it. And with that, I don't think I have anything else to say about it. Let me give it back to myself from yesterday. Jumping ahead here, I'm going to go into a 5-star book. The last 2 books I'm going to talk about are in a series together, and one was a 4-star, one was a 5-star. So the next book I want to talk about is The Collected Regrets of Clover, but it follows a woman named Clover. She is a death doula, and she essentially sits with people at the end of their life. So if they are at the hospital and their family hasn't made it yet, it's just someone that can sit with them and just talk about anything that they want. Clover keeps 3 journals with her. Forgive me for not remembering exactly what they are. One is their last words, one is regrets, and I think the third is advice. Clover kind of realizes in the book that I should be living my life to the fullest, and I thought this book, in reading the description, in being close to death, Clover kind of wants to start living life to the fullest. She was really close to her grandfather, and in her 20s, she was traveling abroad, studying different cultures in regards to death. And while she was gone, her grandfather passed, and she's always regretted not being there for him in his final moments or getting that final time with him. We follow Clover starting to experience life, but in Clover's way. It isn't this grand way where she's going and seeing and doing these like grandiose things, but it's in Clover's way of experiencing life, pushing her boundaries, and meeting new people, having new experiences, and for that, I really liked it. In the book, Clover is an older woman, she's 36, but older woman, I feel like in the book world, because a lot of time in like fantasy books, for example, everyone is like 18 for 2 days and all of a sudden they can do everything, right? So older as in just not the typical characters that you see. And I liked that. I liked that she was an adult, that she was a woman, that she had kind of had her life experiences, even if they were within her bubble, so to speak. But I just like that, and I don't feel like you see it too often. I would recommend this book. I love books about kind of anything reflective, introspective, kind of ask those moral questions, like, am I living life to the fullest, and following someone on that journey. I love stuff like that. So I gave this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I think I want to get it memorialized on my bookshelf and get it in a paperback. This one I rented from the library. The last 2 books I read in June were from the Murderbot series. I feel like these went really viral and I finally got on the train. With these, I also rented them from my library. I've read books 1 and 2. So Artificial Condition, or All Systems Red, and then Artificial Condition. Murderbot Diaries follows a sec unit named Murderbot, and they have essentially hacked their governor module, and no one knows that essentially they have like autonomy and that they don't have to follow instruction. They are not your typical robot where they want to like go and harm people. It just watches hundreds and hundreds of hours of serials and soap operas and just enjoys its dramas too. But in the first book, Murderbot is on contract with these group of researchers. They're doing kind of an extraplanetary little moments throughout the book where it was just like a cute, like a cute, for lack of a better way to say it, just like moments that they had with the researchers. Like a person in Murderbot is not really about it. Things are still a little bit awkward for them to do that. Bot series, or the Murderbot Diaries, it's really cute. They're short. They're fun stories. It's a different take on robots and their interactions with humans. It's fun to be in Murderbot's head. Again, just a cute story. It's gripping, good storytelling. It's short, digestible, but you're just immersed the whole time. So the first book in the Murderbot Diaries was a 5-star read for me. The second one is called All Systems Red, and Murderbot has gone back to the planet that he was essentially created on from the company. Can't remember the name of it right now. It just wasn't as gripping as the first one. They interact with more people. They are trying to figure out what happened to them, and it is still a really gripping story. There's a Murderbot interacting with another robot, and their interactions are hilarious. All Systems Red was a 4-star read for me just because I think I'm being just critical, maybe 4.5, 4.7. I still really enjoyed it. I want to read the rest of the series. It just didn't quite grip me like the first book did, but still a really great story. Bump up the rating to 4.5, 4.75. I still really loved it. I think it's going to be a really good reading month. It started off really strong. So excited to catch you guys up about July and give you my thoughts for that. I love the idea of making a little community on my little corner of the internet. But if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I'm really excited about making content for this. And any recommendations, let me know your thoughts. If you read any of these books, I'd love to hear them. If you had any similar experiences or something you'd like to try and read, I'd love to hear about it. But thank you so much for sticking to the end, and I will see you in the next one.